Good morning, members. It is the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting. We have only one item on the agenda today. That is the effectiveness of policies for importing population in recent years and future population growth targets. I will now invite the administration to come in. Members who would like to speak, you may now press the button. In relation to today's item, the administration or the Secretariat has prepared a background brief for members' reference. I welcome Mr. Ho Kai-ming, the Under-Secretary for Labour and Welfare, and his team for their attendance. Under-Secretary, will you please walk us through the paper? Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members and Chairman. Manpower has been the key element for our success and our growth. Encouraging population growth will provide the sufficient manpower for our economic growth demand and strengthen our talent pool. By the end of 2024, we had a 7.53 million population. According to the CNSD's forecast, by mid-2046, we will have 8.19 million population. Excluding foreign domestic helpers, the proportion of elderly persons aged 65 or above will increase to 36% of the population. The labour force participation rate will also decline from 55% in 2023 to 52% in 2046. In face with the aging population and shortage of manpower supply, we have adopted a multi-pronged strategy, which includes promoting fertility and attracting outside talents to promote local population growth in support of the manpower required for our long-term development and continuously enlarge our local talent pool. Now, with the talent admission schemes, we have turned around the decline of population and labour participation rate during the pandemic. Now, with our pro-birth strategies, we have arrested the decline in birth rate. Now, with the aging population, we foresee that the labour market will remain tight in the future. Now, besides unleashing local labour force and admitting outside talent, on the premise of ensuring employment priority for local workers, we will enhance the mechanism for importation of labour. For example, adding a new channel to allow young, non-degree skilled labour to come to Hong Kong to replenish the labour force in sectors with specific labour shortage. Now, bureaus and departments will pay close attention to the changes in local population and manpower situation in trades to enhance and review their relevant manpower strategies. We will listen to members' views and answer members' questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ho Kai-ming. So far, 7 members have pressed the button. They are Professor Chow-man Kwong, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Mr. Frankie Yang, Ms. Nixie Lam, Ms. Doreen Kong, Ms. Eunice Yeung, the Deputy Chairperson, and Mr. Bill Tang. Each member will have 5 minutes. Professor Chow-man Kwong. Thank you, Chairman. We all know that we are facing the challenges of mismatch in manpower, decline in labour force, and decline in birth rate. Now, the G20 submitted a proposal to the government, including enhancing the talent pass scheme, lifting the quota places for non-local students in universities. Now, for top talent pass scheme, we have received 120,000 applications. Now, 99,000 applications have been approved. Now, this is very positive for our position as an international high-caliber talent. Now, as I've mentioned in other occasions, when we consider something like the high potential talent scheme in the UK and also the talent admission scheme in Japan and Singapore. Now, they target master degree level talents. This will allow industries in need of high caliber talents like the INT industry and the maritime industry to introduce manpower. Now, for example, RCHD and escalator and lifts technicians and so on, it's not that employers are unwilling to hire locally. There are real employment difficulties in Hong Kong. Now, with insufficient manpower, the repairing cycle or maintenance cycle for lifts and escalators will be lengthened, and this is not good for Hong Kong. Now, paragraph 15, it mentions that under the general employment policy and the admission scheme for mainland talents and professionals, there will be a new channel to allow young and experienced non-degree talents with relevant professional and technical skills to come to Hong Kong. Now, can the government tell us more about the enhancement? And also, what are the responses of the industries to the enhancement? Finally, the labor force participation rate. By 2022, it was at 58.2%. Now, in 2023, the number has dropped to 53%. We are concerned about how we can unleash the female labor force in Hong Kong. Now, the latest female labor force participation rate in Hong Kong is 52%, Singapore 62, Macau 58, South Korea 56, Japan 55. Ours is even lower than that of Japan's. Now, the government has been doing a lot to unleash the female labor force, but the results are not astonishing. So what will the governments do to enhance the measures? 3 questions on the Secretary. Thank you. Now, concerning non-degree talents, I will defer the question to Mr. Chiu. For the 3rd question, I will defer to Mr. James Zhang, Senior Statistician. Now, the low labor participation rate among our elderly people is because the lack of primary and secondary industries in Hong Kong. On how we can enhance the top talent pass scheme to take in more master degree holders, we will keep reviewing the mechanism. Now, the TTPS is mainly targeting degree holders or graduate degree holders. Now, Professor Chow points out that the bottleneck are talents with a higher educational attainment, so we will review the mechanism. Mr. Chiu, thank you. For technical non-degree talents, like we have mentioned, in the first half of the year, under GEP and ASMTP, we will add an avenue to allow young and experienced non-degree talents to come to Hong Kong to work. Now, we are still consulting the trade and the major labor unions on what occupations should be covered on the list. We expect only a very small number of occupations will be included. There will be a quota. Now, we will announce the details soon, but we plan to roll out the plan in the first half of the year. Senior statistician, thank you. Now, for females' labor participation rate in Hong Kong, as mentioned by Professor Chow, ours is lower compared with our neighbors. Now, as the Undersecretary said, we have a smaller number of primary and secondary industries in Hong Kong. These industries provide more part-time job opportunities. Now, in Singapore, the ratio of female at the age of 15 to 24 56% of them have a degree qualification, while in Hong Kong we only have 52%. That also explains the lower female labor force participation rate in Hong Kong. Dr. Low Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. Now, the figures quoted in the manpower report is worrying. By 2024, our population was 7.53 million. By mid-2046, it will reach 8.19 million. However, elderly persons aged 65 and over by 2046 will increase to 36% of our population. So more than 1/3 of the population then will be 65 and above. It is a seriously aged society. Now, labor force participation rate in 2024 it was 55%. By 2046, it will drop to 52%. I raised this concern before. Now, the younger generation is not interested in the occupation group of skilled technical workers. That leads to a severe shortage in the group. Now, overall manpower shortage in the near future is also worrying. Now, there was a report saying that by 2028, in 3 years' time, the manpower shortage gap will be 180,000 people. So my question is, first, the population forecast of 8.19 million in mid-2046. Now, the paper quoted some pro-birth and talent admission measures adopted by the government. So has the estimates of 8.19 million taken into account of all those measures? If that's the case, that's even more worrying, because after all your efforts, the population growth is still meager and the manpower gap is still huge. Now, the previous member has also touched upon this question. Skilled technical workers and non-degree experienced workers. There will be new avenues for them to come to Hong Kong to work, but they don't have the right of abode. So the scheme targets young people under the age of 35 with skilled and experience. They can get the right of abode if they stay in Hong Kong. Now, the scheme hasn't started in earnest yet, but I'm worried about your pace. In Shenzhen, there is a lot of high-caliber talents which fueled their research and development sectors, and also their labor comes from all over the country. So the quality of their servicing industry is very good. When we go to Shenzhen, we see young people working diligently in the service sector. So I'm very concerned about our future.
Undersecretary, on the population of 8.19 million, I'll ask my colleagues to supplement. I have said before that I think it has already taken into account the new policy measures. Dr. Low is concerned about the non-degree technical workers, and they are important for the operation of Hong Kong as a society. Well, apart from the information provided by the Deputy Secretary, the quota of 10,000, we also, through the VTC, have encouraged people from the mainland and the overseas to stay in Hong Kong after undertaking VTC programs. So this program will be refined in the light of our development, and we will try to adjust the quotas accordingly. For the non-degree technical workers, during our manpower assessment, we think that we have a shortage of 60,000 I think the figure quoted by Dr. Low of 180,000 is the overall figure. But we will try to increase the quota, and we hope that we'll be able to attract about 1,000 people to come work in Hong Kong. I'll ask my colleague from the Labour Department to supplement. Well, Dr. Low has talked about the total population projection of 8.19 million. It is released by the Census and Statistics Department in August. We take into account the policies which are prevailing then, like the Top Talent Pass scheme. So the known policy measures have already been taken into account when we work out this projection figure of 8.19 million. But if there are new policy measures rolled out after our population projection, then obviously they have not been included. Chairman, the Undersecretary has pointed out my areas of concern. We talked about the skilled technical workers. There is a shortfall of 60,000, and overall, you may have about 10,000 people coming in Hong Kong if the schemes are successful. But for the top talents, if they come to Hong Kong, they would also need to be supported by staff of different calibers. So I think we need to look at whether the overall manpower resources are adequate. You only have the leaders, but you don't have the supporting staff. That's not good. Well, thank you, Dr. Low, for your comments. For the non-degree technical professionals, they have not all come to Hong Kong yet. This is kind of like a transition period. We think that some of these technical staff may be retiring, and so there is a gap in the market. So that's why we roll out this scheme. But at this stage, not all of them have retired because some of them may stay on and work longer. So we have to look at the market demand and supply carefully. We'll go back and look at the points raised by Dr. Low. Next, Dr. Ngaman Yu. Thank you, Chair. Today, we're going to discuss about population policy and how we can enhance our labor force. For the labor importation schemes, a lot of them have to have the necessary visa before they can come and work. For example, like the PLB drivers, they need to come to Hong Kong and then apply for a driver license. So not all of them can come and work immediately. They have to apply for the driver license first. So can you go for a training program first before you hire them? So training first before hiring, is that possible? Because we need the skilled workers. So you can use the Hong Kong program and the Hong Kong standard to train them. So then these trained labor force, and if they are found suitable by the employers, then they can come to Hong Kong through the various importation schemes. And then we can increase the quality of our labor force immediately. Otherwise, there may be problem for the employers because after hiring these staff, they have to train them. And you have to wait for about 6-9 months before they can work. And then their visa will only last for 2 years and they have to leave Hong Kong. So I would like to know what the government will do about this. Undersecretary, well, Dr. An's question concerns about the mutual recognition of qualifications. Well, for some of the drivers, we have been liaising with the Guangdong authorities and they have undergone some training there. But for some of the other technical skills, they would really need to come to Hong Kong. For example, like PLB drivers, they have to apply for a PLB license because they have to comply with our law and the enforcement actions. So for the 100,000 non-degree technical professionals, we will try to take into account this factor and see how we can enhance the scheme so that once they come to Hong Kong, they can start working and supplement our labor force. Any follow-up? Yes, Chairman. I think we have to look at the matter from different prospects. The relevant bureau are working on the different sector-specific labor importation scheme, but the WB is the overall coordinator. Can you work with the various policy bureaus? For example, can you give them a fast track for applying for the PLB license? Otherwise, if they engage someone from outside Hong Kong and they have to wait for 9 months before they can work. Then during these 9 months, the employer has to provide accommodation and salary for them. So it is not useful for the employer. And then also the licensed driver will have to look after these non-licensed drivers. So this is just one example. I know that in future there may be other sector-specific labor importation schemes. So I want you to plan ahead so that try to give them some training before they come, or after they have come, give them training within a short period of time so that they will be qualified and got the necessary licenses to work in Hong Kong. Thank you for the suggestion. We'll go back and relay that to the Transport and Logistics Bureau. For the different categories, some of the licenses are not issued by the government. For example, like accountants, if you have an accountant coming from Australia, they have to go to the relevant professional body to acquire the necessary qualification to work in Hong Kong. So we'll try to see how we can try to help as far as possible. Thank you. Next, Ms. Lexi Lam. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Undersecretary. Well, I think we would try to talk about population targets at this meeting. I think for the population policy, you cannot just rely on the efforts of one bureau or several bureaus. I think our overall target of this subcommittee is to make sure the future direction for our population growth, our population mix, and also a population target. There are several sources. We have local people, and then we have people born in Hong Kong. And then also we try to import people from the mainland and from overseas. These people may come and stay in Hong Kong. So I would like to know whether the government has already set a proportion for such population. So how many % of population do you want to be enticed from overseas? And how many % of local people that you would like to have in Hong Kong to be born? So I think we are just talking about the issue in bits and pieces, and we're just spinning around at the lower level. But we haven't talked about sort of the global future direction. I think for the mainland, the policy is that we need high-quality population to support the development of our mainland, our motherland. But this is a very critical issue, and it needs deep thinking. I think for the population policy, we have to escalate it to the policy secretary level. Otherwise, we are just talking about various figures. We're waiting for people to come to Hong Kong and there are constraints. Then we are not really having a planning for our overall population policy. We have a low birth rate in Hong Kong. We have aging population. These are the hard facts. But when I talk about the proportion, I would like to know how we are going to boost the fertility rate in Hong Kong, and also whether we will set a short-term or a longer-term target, say for 5 years or 10 years, for the population mix. Undersecretary. Well, Chairman, as I have pointed out in my opening remarks, I think Ms. Nixie Lam has touched upon a question which is a bit uncertain. As I pointed out earlier, we want to have population growth so as to support the economic development of Hong Kong. And then because of the economic change, the development of technology and the industries, there will be changes on the population requirements. So it is difficult to say at this stage how much population do we need. Well, for example, you may say that we need technical workers, but we have the development of AI, so we cannot be very precise about the number of technical workers that we will need. So we have to move with the times. And by 2025, we will try to have the midterm update of the 2023 manpower projections, and we will try to project the requirements for 2028. So this is a continuing work for us. Any follow-up? I think this is a very passive approach. What I have pointed out is that we want an overall objective. And I'm not saying that you need to set targets ABC and I will measure you in 10 years' time whether you meet the 3 targets. But as the senior officials of the Hong Kong SAR and the Legislative Council of the Hong Kong SAR, I think we have to map out the direction for the future development of our population. Otherwise, you'll be just doing these passive manpower projections every now and then. So I think for the time being, our policy is that it's definitely going to be a low fertility rate of 0.77%, and we're definitely going to have aging population. For a lot of developed economies, they are also facing aging population. But I think we need to set out an overall target. At the same time, we got to have an overall population target in addition to the various manpower projections. And then all the various policy issues would have to tie in. So don't just rely on the several tools that you have at hand, like manpower projections, but be more comprehensive and have a holistic approach. Deputy Secretary, I'll ask him to supplement. Well, thank you, Ms. Lixi Lam. We have heard about your suggestion, and we attach a lot of importance to the population policy. And we have explained to members before that the CS has been chairing an HRPC on human resources. So the Secretary is a member of that. So for the population-related issues, we have to report to the HRPC from time to time. And there are non-official members on this committee as well. And they will try to oversee the work of the various policy bureaus. For the individual policies and the population targets, as pointed out by the Undersecretary, the crux of the matter is that from the LWB, we will be looking at the manpower demand. We're trying to see whether the manpower supply is sufficient to meet demand. So for the related population policies, we would have different KPIs. Well, the increase of fertility rate is the most direct way to boost population. And the government has an array of measures to boost fertility rate. And we will try to oversee that. If we do not have enough babies born in Hong Kong, then we'll try to look at labor importation. Members may notice that for the last policy address, for the extension of visas for imported workers, we have set an API. From 2025 to 2027, we want to renew about at least 50,000 visas so that these people can stay in Hong Kong and it will be beneficial to our population structure. So instead of setting rigid targets, I think it may be better to try to set out KPIs for various measures to boost our population. We have now KPIs for imported workers. We are now also talking about technical professionals that we want to import, and we will set another KPI for that. Also, we will continue with the manpower projection. We will update that regularly. We will keep a close watch on the trend and see how the various policies need to be enhanced and new policies need to be rolled out. This will be a more pragmatic approach. Next, Ms. Eunice Yong.
Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions. Today, our item is about promoting population growth by encouraging birth and importation of labor. Now, there are several annexes specifying the statistics on talent admission schemes and various labor importation schemes. Now, for various talent admission schemes, the approval rate is some 90%. However, for quality migrant admission scheme, only 13,000 of applications were approved. As at February this year, only 9,000 applications were approved among the 11,000 applications. Now, for quality migrant admission scheme, or QMAS, why is the approval rate so low? Some talents under this scheme have approached us and complained of the long processing time. So at least they need to know where they are in the queue. This will affect the decision on whether they will come to Hong Kong to work. That is a decision which affects the talents themselves and the family members as well. So the information is very important for their decision-making process. So we need to make our process more transparent. Has the administration studied why the approval rate is so low, and how will you enhance the approval rate? Now, labor force participation rate between 2024 and 2046, the percentage will drop from 55% to 52%. Now, in 2024, the seasonal change in labor force participation rate shows that for those between 14 and 29 years old, the labor force participation rate has dropped. That is understandable because more people are choosing to progress further in educational attainment. Now, for elderly people above the age of 60, between 60 and 64 and above 65, the labor force participation rate increases proportionally, especially for the oldest group. There was an increase of some 20%. So in 2046, the percentage will drop to 52%, with a larger proportion of the labor force taken up by elderly people. Now, the paper focuses on talent admission, but in terms of encouraging local labor force participation, there are fewer mentions. So how will the government enhance the participation rates of labor force in Hong Kong, especially among young people? Under Secretary, well, I believe we have answered the question in the past meetings. That includes offering the $10,000 cash allowance for middle to old age people who are rejoining the labor force if they continue to work for six consecutive months. That would help unleash the labor force in the middle age and elderly labor force market. But as I said, we have a shortage of job vacancies in the primary and secondary industries. That's why our elderly people's labor force participation rate is lower than that of Japan. It's impossible to ask an elderly person to work as a receptionist in their 70s, but in Japan, they have primary industry jobs like farming. Now, for QMOS, it has been running smoothly for many years. Many people are eligible for application under the scheme, but they would be rejected when the applications are considered by the committee. So that explains why the approval ratio is lower, and also the processing time is longer because it is not a point system, just like Top Talent Pass scheme. The committee will review the merits of the application in terms of education attainments and age and many other factors. So unlike the requirements advertised on the red note, the system is much more complicated. You need to qualify for the threshold, and then there will be other considerations. We have raised the eligibility threshold. We are now clearing the backlog. The committee is reviewing the applications. So I suggest applicants under the QMAS scheme to switch to the Top Talent Pass scheme, which is an easier avenue. QMAS is reserved for very high caliber talents. Now, we can't control which schemes the applicants chooses. Mr. Bill Tang, thank you. I hope the team led by Mr. Ho Kai-ming would launch a publicity campaign or even a law enforcement operation to crack down on misunderstanding. Now, there are misunderstanding that those who come to Hong Kong to work under the Labour Supplementary Importation Scheme can get rights of abode after working for 7 years in Hong Kong. That is a misunderstanding. Some people, even local Hong Kong residents, are spreading this misunderstanding because of financial rewards. This is wrong. So I hope the government can clarify this situation. Second, on the supplementary labour importation schemes, an additional 50,000 workers have come to Hong Kong to work. Many women and also the middle-aged and elderly people are complaining that it is more difficult for them to find a job now. For example, the banquet industry and also restaurants and so on, it is much more difficult for them to get a part-time job. Despite the government's claim that you are supporting female employment, female in Hong Kong now face more difficulties in getting a job. So how do you reconcile that? Now, we support the incoming of talents from the mainland and overseas into Hong Kong. However, according to US statistics, in 2023 and 2024, the number of applications under the TTPS and QMAS were the record high. However, the number has dropped. In 2025, as of February, the total number of applications under these schemes is just 180,000. So do you expect the number to climb down further, or do you expect the number will rebound? Under Secretary, we are aware that there are people deliberately touting false information that those who come to Hong Kong under the Supplementary Labour Importation Scheme can get the rights of abode. I clarify that that is not the case. So for deliberate peddling of false information, I welcome reports. We will follow up on these cases because that is wrong. Now, on the availability of part-time jobs in industries with seasonal changes, for example, restaurants, the labor demand is different between peak seasons and off-seasons. Now, we're now collecting views on the Labour Supplementary Scheme, and we will adjust these schemes in the future, having considered the views. Now, on the third question about TDPS and QMAS and also the general situation of talent admission schemes, have we reached a bottleneck? I will defer the question to Mr. Chiu. Now, some schemes, when they were launched, many applicants did not know the specifics of the schemes, but they applied for it anyway because they thought it would benefit them. Now we are approaching the time of renewal of the first batch of applicants. We will compile a report later. Now, we welcome talents who want to come to Hong Kong to work. But for those who try to abuse the system to get the right of stay in Hong Kong but have no plan to settle down here and work, we will consider these applications very seriously. Now, we think these schemes will become long-term tools for attracting talents to come to Hong Kong. Mr. Chen Xiu-Hong. Thank you, Chairman. Now, as the previous speakers have mentioned, today's topic is on encouraging population growth and replenishing our labor force. Now, on growing our population, it is the fundamental method to sustain our economic growth because we need manpower to support economic growth. Even with the advent of AI and other technologies, we still need manpower to man the frontline jobs. That includes frontline jobs in the cleansing industries and the construction industry. So in terms of growing our population, in the past meetings, we have seen the population forecast, and there are other subcommittees studying the difficulties brought about by the declining population, including the high cost in the construction industry and the slow progress of capital works. Now, according to the paper, it seems that the problem can be distilled into several aspects: low birth rates, low labor force participation rates, and the high percentage of elderly people in the population. 1 in 3 is an elderly person. Now, how can we enhance our population policy under the leadership of the HRPC? And what measures are proving to be effective? We need short, medium, and long-term measures to address the problem and sustain our growth. The paper mentions the talent admission schemes. I agree that we can't be impatient. Some applicants will leave after some time, but some will stay in Hong Kong and contribute to our economy. So there are altogether some 100,000 people who have been approved under the scheme. So if 80% of them are staying in Hong Kong, they would be our new blood. On the other hand, the government has done everything to support, to boost the birth rate. There's even the $20,000 newborn baby bonus, but the birth rate is still very low. And it takes time for these newborns to become workers. So how can we plug the gap in the interim? Now, we have a number of talent admission schemes. However, for labor importation scheme, those who come under these schemes will not enjoy the right of abode. So the long-term strategies, the long-term solutions are boosting the birth rates and giving the right of abode to applicants who have come to Hong Kong. Now, I gave you all this background to drive the points that we need high-level steering from the government. Now, besides the HRPC steered by the Deputy Secretary, are the KPIs? Mr. Chen Xiu-Hong, please give the administration some time to answer. So at present, can you give us a summary? What are the most important and most efficient policies measures. I'm not happy with your conclusion. Paragraph 17, you said that you will continue to monitor the effectiveness of the measures. Well, that's too bad because time is running short. The later we implement effective measures, the more pressing the problem will become. Can you give us a clear picture?
Undersecretary, Chairman, I think Mr. Chan's suggestion is that we try to tackle the issue for the long term and not just the short term. So for the longer term, we all know that time is required. The short-term measure is labor importation. For the medium term, I would like to supplement that actually a lot of the dependents do come under these schemes. We now have about 90,000 dependents coming with the talents. Some of them are spouses, some of them are children. So they will also be the new blood for Hong Kong. But we cannot control this number because one talent may bring 3 family members or more to Hong Kong. So we need to observe that and see how many of them will come and what will be the changes. So we do have the short, medium, and long-term measures. As regards the effectiveness, we will continue to monitor the situation and adjust the measures. Thank you. Next, Mr. Benson Look. Thank you, Chair. Today we're talking about how to promote population growth. And I note from the paper that the government has put a lot of emphasis on promoting fertility, and there are various measures like giving priority for selecting public housing units and also allocation of such units. And also there is a newborn baby bonus. And I note that for promoting fertility, there is some effect. In 2024, there are 36,700 newborn babies. So as compared to 2023, it is 3,000 more. But generally, I think the measures to promote fertility is helpful to enhancing population growth. For this subcommittee, we have been discussing about the measures to promote fertility, and we also put emphasis on the publicity of such measures. So I would like to know for the past year and also in the future, how is the government going to step up publicity on encouraging fertility? Well, in the past, we do have some measures on birth rates, and I would like to know whether the administration has any publicity program for encouraging childbirth. The second point is that it is pointed out in the paper that for the skilled technical workers occupation group, it is not attractive to the young generation. And say for the construction industry, they have been trying to encourage female workers to join them. And we note that friends from the construction sector have rolled out a lot of measures, like, for example, they have changing rooms, they have restrooms installed for the female workers so that they will have a more comfortable working environment. I would like to know what measures is the government taking to encourage female workers to join the workforce, especially for women employment. Do you have any measures facilitating them to join the construction sector? Undersecretary, 2 questions. As Mr. Benson Look has pointed out, we have different measures to encourage people to have new babies. But then these measures are undertaken by the various policy bureaus. Ranging from the LWB, we're trying to help by providing maternity leave, and we also have financial support for them. And then during the childbirth period, you have breastfeeding rooms trying to help them. And as the member has pointed out, we give these families with newborns to have priority for flat selection and allocation. of public housing. So we do have various measures to encourage childbirth. But then, of course, it is up to our citizens to decide whether they want to have children. But we will encourage them to try to have babies early and have more babies. This is the general direction. As regards measures to encourage women to join the construction sector, under the ERB and the Construction Industry Council, we have various programs designed for female workers. For Kam Sheung Road, we have CIC programs which are dedicated for female workers. Well, of course, not all the jobs are suitable for women to take up, but if there are any jobs that are suitable for women, the lighter ones, we will encourage them to take them up. Well, I think for the construction sector, the government is rolling out a lot of public works, but the private sector is rather quiet these days. So we will try to oversee the situation and try to encourage more people, especially women, to join the construction workforce. Any supplement from other colleagues? No, thank you. Mr. Lok? For the construction industry, I can see that the administration has put in efforts to encourage female workers to join the construction industry. But for fertility, in the past, we tried to encourage people to have 2 children. But you can see that these days, we have a lot of publicity which is discouraging for people to have children. There is an advertisement saying that you need $4 million to raise a child, so this is discouraging. But I think we should have positive publicity and repackage the whole thing so as to encourage people to have babies. We have discussed this for several times, and I do hope that the administration would come up with measures. For example, you may make use of APIs and other publicity channels to promote childbearing. Undersecretary, anything to supplement? Yes, Chairman. We do recall that you have suggested we put up baby photos in offices to encourage people to have babies. Ms. Doreen Kong? Thank you, Chairman. This subcommittee is on population policy and initiatives. I think we should look at the matter from a broader perspective, and a lot can be done. When I look at the agenda item for today's meeting, and I have also read the papers, my personal observation is that population statistics does not represent population policy. There are a lot of statistics and figures in the paper. But these are just statistics. It is not a population policy. In 2015, we have rolled out the population policy and strategies, but we have not reviewed them for quite a while. For the 2023 plus, it is only a vision by the planning department. It is not a policy. I think this committee is very useful because population policy will affect our education, housing, healthcare, medical, city planning, etc. But when I look at the paper, I think it is just touching on a very narrow scope. For other cities, I think they have a center for populations. And also they have a study on population, and they straddle 50 years. So they try to look at the issue holistically and in the longer term. Well, I understand that the Undersecretary is representing the LWB. I understand that you only focus on birth rates, manpower, resources, etc. But you're just focusing on the statistics and just manpower. But this is not representing the whole of population policy. I think the matter should be chaired by the Chief Secretary or someone of a higher caliber. Well, we are trying to look at the effectiveness of measures to increase population. We have a lot of statistics in front of us, but there are various ways to measure effectiveness. You don't just look at the GDP or the population growth figures. I think you also need to look at the cost, the benefits, the competitiveness of Hong Kong as a society and the consequences that we have to bear. So, Under Secretary, I have read your papers. You have a paragraph on effectiveness, but I don't find any benchmark there. How are you going to measure the effectiveness? Don't just look at figures. So from LWB's perspective, what do you use to measure effectiveness? We have a lot of talents and professionals coming to Hong Kong, and you said that a lot of them bring their family members along. They have their dependents with them. So how would this have long-term impact on the various sectors and industries of Hong Kong with these people coming to Hong Kong? Under Secretary. For Ms. Kong's question, the first one is that whether we need a commission at a high level to lead this. We already have one. The CS is already leading the Human Resources Planning Commission, the HRPC. So the terms of reference includes population policy. Although it is not on population policy, but it is on human resources. So population policy will be under the HRPC, overseen by the CS. So most of the relevant policy secretaries will be on this commission. On the benchmark for measuring effectiveness, well, this is difficult to quantify. Unlike other places, Hong Kong is not a country. We're only giving them a right of abode. So we have Australians, Chinese, and people of different nationality coming to Hong Kong. So we count them all in. We don't just look at the Chinese nationals. So we have a greater flow of population in Hong Kong. So during the pandemic, a lot of people left, but afterwards, a lot of them come back. So it is difficult to benchmark ourselves with another city. If you have suggestion on that, we'll be happy to learn more about that. Even Singapore is different from us because for Singapore, they have schemes promoting permanent residency there. So I think we have to look at the local situation, and we set the KPI for ourselves, and the KPI is to meet the demand for the development of various industries. I think this is the most important point, but we are welcome and open to suggestions. Hong Kong is very unique. It is difficult to compare us with other places. Next, Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, Chairman. The administration has provided a paper in Appendix 1. There's a table, and the Immigration Department has provided information on the figures for 2023-24, the number of people coming to Hong Kong. But for other programs, they use a calendar year as the measurement. So is it possible for the government, when you try to provide statistics, can you use the same format, use the financial year or the calendar year, so that it will be easier for us to analyze and compare the figures? Can you improve on that? Second, I note from the paper in paragraph 15 that you have a new scheme. You will try to encourage non-degree talents to come to Hong Kong. You will have a new channel for them to come. Have you set out a list of industries for this scheme? Do you have any qualification requirements? Can you enlighten us more on this new channel? You have mentioned that these are not the top talents, but they are kind of like the mid-level professionals. Do you have more information on that? So for the lower level and also the top level talents, what professionals do you want to aim at? And what is the future development plan? You said that you will consult the relevant industries and the stakeholders. So when will the consultations take place? In the past, the legislative councillors have not been consulted. So for this new scheme, will you make it a broader consultation and try to include us for the consultation so that we know more about the program? Thank you.
3 questions on the Secretary. Concerning the figures provided by the Immigration Department, we will talk to them. Concerning the formats. Now, in terms of importation of non-degree technical talents, we are still consulting the trade. When we have more information, we will consult the panel. Now, for work visas and other supplementary labor scheme, the main requirement is degree holder. For non-degree holders who are experienced and skilled, there are no avenues for them to come to Hong Kong besides supplementary labor importation schemes. That's why we are creating 2 new avenues under the 2 talent admission schemes for them to work in Hong Kong. We are still consulting the trade. In the near future, we will consult members' views. We will definitely consult the lawmakers' views before we implement the policy. Follow-up questions? Yes. The Under Secretary said the Deputy Secretary is chairing the HRPC, which comprises Director of Bureaus. Now, manpower policy is closely related to education policy, but there is no coordination between the Education Bureau and the Labor and Welfare Bureau. So in the future, review of curriculum, can we do something to encourage young people to pursue a career in skilled occupations? It is a targeted question about education. Now, the HRPC is chaired by the Chief Secretary for Administration. Now, for industry-specific curriculum, including the INT industry, we have a steering committee on education, manpower, and innovation and technology. Different bureaus work together under that steering committee to nurture talents we need for our INT industry. Ms. Judy Chan, thank you. Today's topic is crucial for our growth drive in the future. Now, we know that the government has adopted a multi-pronged approach to increase our population. But it seems that despite the efforts you have put in, the results are still underwhelming. So besides continuing to work on it, we need to figure out where the problem is. In terms of labor force participation rate, it is still dropping year on year. Now, our expectation is one thing. We need to find the deep-rooted issue and deep-rooted cause for the continuous drop. So besides listening to members' views, can the government establish cross-departmental task force to study the issue? For instance, there are concerns whether our public housing strategies or public housing policies would encourage young people to take a back seat and deprive them of their ambitions. For various reasons, some people who should be working have opted to become carers in their families. So can there be targeted policies to match the manpower with the jobs better? Under Secretary, like Ms. Judy Chan said, we have been conducting research and investigations on why our labor force has stagnated. Last year, we have conducted a manpower projection to understand the exact manpower demand in various industries. And Ms. Judy Chan's perspective is more on unleashing the female labor force and also the workforce who are now carers in their families. In the future, we will collaborate with the CNSD to conduct relevant research to find out the reasons why. Thank you. So the two questions I raised, that is whether our public housing policies would affect the intention of upward mobility, and also many people are staying at home to become carers. So I don't seek an answer to these two questions right now, but I don't think the government understands the impact of these two factors on our manpower situation. So there should be in-depth studies on them. The replies from the administration. Next, Dr. Hui Simon Lee. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to follow up on Ms. Doreen Kong's question on KPIs. I also think that importation of labor should be aligned with industry's demand. That should be the fundamental consideration. Now, my suggestions are we need to have a more detailed picture of the industry's manpower demand. 2, on our population structure. When the Basic Law was drafted, a major consideration was Hong Kong's openness and also the manpower demand of our economy. So that's why the design was a right of abode or permanent residency instead of nationality. So drawing reference to other places because of economic and societal requirements, they don't define rights of abode by nationality. They also have schemes. They also have policies like a permanent residency. So maybe we can make reference to these places. For some countries, they don't offer nationality. They don't have a policy of single nationality as well. They also recognize multiple nationalities of their citizens. But I just think we should make reference to other places. Thank you, Dr. Simon Lee. We will make reference to these. I believe you're talking about European countries or Eurozone countries. We will study them. Mr. Kwok Wai-keung. Thank you, Chairman. Today's topic is on the effectiveness of policies for importing population in recent years and future population growth targets. So on this topic, I have some suggestions. First of all, we have seen multiple waves of immigration leading to population growth in Hong Kong in the past. They provided the manpower needed for our economic growth. So that's an inevitable trend. We are concerned about the future. We do support the continuous increase in educational attainments of our population. Now, 90% of our population aged between 25 and 34 have an educational attainment, have post-secondary educational attainment. However, it seems that the matching between talent and jobs are now different. The most university graduates would have higher aspirations for their job. They would usually prefer to work in the knowledge-based economy and take up more comfortable jobs. But it seems that there is a shortage of these quality job openings in Hong Kong. That's why many people are staying out of the job market. So how can we increase the labor force participation rates and encourage more young people to join the labor market? Well, I don't think the Labor and Welfare Bureau can do much on its own to boost the participation rates. The government as a whole, from education to birth rates and labor policies, we need to have a full package of policy to achieve results. Now back to today's topic. For low to medium skilled jobs, there is still much manpower demand. So we should persist. We should uphold the policy to prioritize local workers first. Now, the local labor force participation rate would be packed with our welfare expenditure. If people are working, they would be less reliant on welfare. On the other hand, if the labor force participation rate is consistently low, then it will pose pressure on our welfare system. So what is the government's response on this? Under Secretary. What Mr. Kwok said was right. We have a 30 to 40,000 workers shortage in frontline jobs. So at present, we are dealing with the situation through labor importation schemes. As mentioned by Mr. Kwok, fewer localers are willing to take up these jobs because the education attainment is high in Hong Kong. Now, we can't shy away from the problem of low birth rates. Now, we have a very high dependency ratio. We need to face this issue head on. We are exploring various measures to address the problem of a heavy burden on our welfare system because of the high dependency ratio. Of course, we can't expect people to work up to 70 years of age without relying on our welfare system. But we do want to encourage those who are still capable of working to stay in the job market, to lower the dependency ratio, to make our economy more sustainable.
So for the first round, I'll be the last one to ask questions. We are going to discuss population policy, and we need to touch on the population target for the future. Some colleagues have touched on the importance of this issue. For me, this is a very important issue in terms of planning, and we got to be proactive. We have talked a bit about the importation of talents, and that is going to address the current problems that we're facing. We want to entice more people to come work in Hong Kong. But I remember for this year's budget, the Financial Secretary has pointed out more than once that we have to review 3 areas of expenditure like education, welfare, medical regularly. So we have to be proactive in planning Hong Kong to be a city with a certain number of population. So the population target is very important. It is not just how many people need to work in Hong Kong, but for Hong Kong as a whole, how much population do we need for the future? For this paper, we have touched upon about the manpower shortage of 180,000. But the paper has not mapped out measures as to how we can meet this gap specifically. So how are we going to meet the manpower shortage? For the labor importation schemes, will we be setting KPIs for annual achievements? Say, how many people do we need to import in order to meet the 180,000 labor shortage? And how are we going to follow up on that? Another issue, as pointed out by the Undersecretary, there is the Human Resources Planning Commission chaired by the CS, and population policy is being covered by the HRPC. So I would like to know, when is population policy included under the HRPC, and do we have long-term targets? Undersecretary. Thank you, Chairman. On meeting the manpower shortage of 180,000, one of the measures is to import workers. Also, we make use of training locally to try to meet this gap as well. So for the ERB, we are having a revamp, and we want to encourage the non-degree holders to come, and then they will undertake programs. On importing labor from overseas, there will be impact on the local citizens. So we have to monitor the situation and review regularly. On the HRPC, I will defer to the Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. On the HRPC, it was set up in 2018, and the population policy was included under the terms of reference then. So for every meeting, there will be different agenda items. But for the population policy, you would notice from the press release that after every meeting, we will report on the issues discussed by the Commission. But then, of course, this is a confidential meeting, so the detailed discussion have not been included in the press release. But for the Hong Kong population and the labor force, last December we have discussed about the matter. And for March this year, we talk about the economic situation and then also the labor market. So for the discussions by the HRPC, it enables the CS and the various policy secretaries to exchange views. And then also the Commission will oversee the work of the various policy bureaus. Thank you. Now we move on to the second round of questions. We have Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, who would like to speak. So, Mr. Chen, we'll defer to you. 5 minutes, please. Thank you, Chairman. I fully agree with the points that you have just raised. In January this year, Chairman, you have raised a question on this subject, and I noticed that the Secretary for Labour and Welfare has not fully answered your question. So the gaps are exactly what are raised by you. Now, In the 2024 policy address, the government said that it has reviewed the population policy back in 2015. And the chief executive has not pointed out a lot of population structural issues. Chairman, for the past decade, there has been a lot of major changes in terms of society and our economy. We have a lot of people going north to spend money and buy things, and then we also have the development of AI. If we use the 2015 projections and also the policies and strategies, I think we have to take into account the measures rolled out by the LWB and the policy address in the past years. We have now formed this subcommittee to focus on population policy and initiatives. So we need to know how we can resolve the issue, the manpower demand and shortages in the short, medium, and long term. For the past meetings, the government representatives from LWB, the Undersecretary is with us every time. But my concern is that we are just beating around the bush. I cannot blame LWB because they can only focus on issues under their purview. But for several discussions, we have pointed out that population policy actually straddle a lot of policy barracks and go beyond the LWB. So the CS is now chairing the HR Planning Commission. And we hope that they will try to have another population policy mapped out, say, by 2025 or 2026. So I don't think the Undersecretary can answer this question. But can you take this issue back? Chairman, under your leadership, our subcommittee would like to give out a very clear message that we have had meetings for several times. But we do need a population policy and initiative. Under the capable leadership of the CS, there will be an interbureau set up. Some 8 policy bureaus are involved. So we are going to have a new economic model. We are going to have low altitude economy. We're going to have AI. We are also going to collaborate with the GBA, and there are a lot of advanced developments there. So under this backdrop, how are we going to map out our population policy? So Undersecretary, can you bring this issue back? See whether the government can issue a population policy by 2025 regarding our future development. Undersecretary, thank you. I'll relay this suggestion back to the relevant colleagues. A short follow-up. We are coming sort of to the close of our subcommittee's work. I think we should have some conclusion worked out. I think for the LWB, issues were discussed under their purview, like child care, like importation of labor, like attracting talents. I think this is not adequate. I think we should consider how we can do more about this important topic. So this is something for us to consider. Thank you for the suggestion. If there are no further colleagues who would like to speak, I think we have concluded discussion on this agenda item. Agenda item 2, AOB. There are no other AOBs. So for the date of next meeting, it will be relayed to members in due course. Thank you for coming.